Gavin Walsh, and today is Monday, the 29th of June, 2026. 15 years ago today, by, I guess, sheer happen chance, my life changed forever, irreversibly forever. It was on a Wednesday afternoon, the 29th of June, 2011. In the months prior, I had cancer, and I had come through that, and I was actually living in Florida at the time, and I came back to Sligo for a month or two, and I was in the library doing research on our family tree, looking for a photograph so I could get the names to match the people in the photograph. The classic, I believe it's a Sligo town band photograph from the very early, about 1920, taken in the corner of the market yard. I never got to find that photo because as I was going through the scanning, literally thousands of Sligo Independent and Sligo, I believe, Times and Sligo Champion newspapers, I was literally just flicking them. I came on the front page of a Sligo Champion of January the 19th, 1952, and the full front headline screamed at me, and it was about a Garavogue man who had been on the mountain rescue squad up to the St. Kevin crash. That is Aer Lingus' first ever plane crash. The previous week, January 10th, 1952. Now, I had been told about this plane crash at the age of 10 in a Carrow National Primary School. And like a lot of things that sticks in my head, I have this terrible thing I call it sticky brain syndrome. Things stick and I can't get them out. And some years later, I was out in Strand Hill learning to fly, and my instructor, this conversation came up, and he told me that Keohane's bookshop, the original owner of Keohane's bookshop, the original proprietor, John Keohane, that he was a brother of the captain of this air crash from 1952. So upon finding this front newspaper in the Champion, I immediately abandoned the family tree, and it's largely remained abandoned for 15 years. And I just felt I was onto something. The hair still in the back of my neck about this phenomenal coincidence that here we had the captain of the St. Kevin airplane, the doomed airliner, with a bookshop, a news agency in Castle Street. And here we also had a stone's throw from Castle Street in Garavogue Villas, a man called Christy McCran, being one of the lead rescuers to the mountain crash site that night. And I went straight to Keohane's bookshop, and of course, Keohane's bookshop had since been taken over by the son Michael, and we were both enthralled at this coincidence. But from that moment on, my life has just irrevocably changed, and it's going to sound very bizarre what I have to say, but I've been largely in automaton mode since then. That is almost like my mind has been hijacked. I became completely obsessed with the story and tracking down all of the 23 victims' families and the causes of the crash. Now, I must admit that at that point, I suspected nothing erroneous. I did not know that the airplane was still left in the bog. I did not know a lot of the occupants and their suitcases and belongings were still in it. I did not know that the plane had been subsequently or retrospectively put off course by an Irish corrupt air crash investigator acting on behalf of the highest senior ministers in our Irish government at that time. They will all be exposed in the coming videos. I've already started to expose them on the English side. I did not know any of this. I did not know it was a full-scale, systematic, institutional, intergovernmental cover-up. And I would go so far as to say, in terms of an intergovernmental aviation cover, it's certainly in the top 10, if not the greatest one ever. I did not know that day on June 29th, 15 years ago. But I nonetheless fell in love with the crash like I never had before. And it gave me a purpose in life. And I just couldn't let go of it. And it brought me to all corners of the globe tracking down victims. And so serious did I take it that I even went to Florida's #1 hypnotherapist to get the opposite of, her name was Lynn Thomas, and I asked her to deprogram my memory, to cleanse out my memory so I could fill it with St. Kevin facts. And she got a bit of a kick out of that, and we did a few sessions, and in the end she wouldn't even charge me because her diary was full of people who wanted her speciality was memory improvement, and here was this guy looking for the complete opposite. But I since found out Lynn Thomas died. God be good to you, Lynn, and thanks for. I know you didn't succeed, but we both gave it a hard shot, and thank you. But over the intervening months, I used to go over and back to Wales. Whenever I'd be back over from Florida, I'd go over and back to Wales, and I eventually got to talk to the locals, and everything the locals told me was diametrically opposed to what the air crash investigators had arrived at, and the subsequent inquiry, which was built on the corrupt investigation. And, I just found this very hard to believe. One woman broke down crying and actually said to me, "I know you don't believe me." And she brought me out to her front door and she said, "There's the direction the plane came in," and it was on fire. So this was all brand new to me, but I was hearing this from everyone in the valley that was still alive. That's the Nant Gwynant Valley in Snowdonia, North Wales. And then one day on October the 5th, 2012, it was a Friday, I was given access to a vault of highly sensitive files, which included the original witness statements. Now, the Aer Lingus of 1952, I have to add, Aer Lingus of 1952 had thought they had destroyed all of these statements. And these statements completely were diametrically opposed to what the investigators had come up with. And I knew then instantly that all the people on the ground, many of whom are still alive, and I've got affidavits from them, I knew they were all telling the truth, and they were all in unison. And I just didn't know the sheer level of the cover-up. I didn't know why they would have to do this. I now know why, because it was about money. And on the subject of money, I'd like to get across three things here. Number one, the pilots were being passively pressurised to fly a dangerous route to save money on gas, on engine wear and tear, and on flight time. Number two, after the crash, the inquiry had to go the way they wanted, so litigation would be harnessed at a maximum per family. And by the way, if you were a sibling or a parent, you got nothing. You might get a one-off £50, but you got nothing unless there were dependents. And that was sealed thanks to this corrupt investigation. So what you had was, number one, in terms of money, making the world go round, number one, you had the pilots of the year had been forced to fly a dangerous route in bad weather to save money. Number two, you had the corrupt investigation going the way it had to go in order to minimise any claims to save money. And number three, 3/4 of a century later, you have me completely blocked, again, in terms of money. And the reason they're afraid this time around, and I'm not going to say who the powers that be are, that's up to any lawyer to decide that, but the reason I'm being blocked today is because the potentiality for litigation is there. And the reason it's there is because under the 3-year statutory rule, and I'm not a legal person before I say this, so I won't be verbatim, but under the 3-year statutory rule, if a company or parties within the realm of the investigation, if they in any way cover up the true cause, then the 3-year statutory of limitations is null and void. Now, I had a 98-year-old barrister who lost his brother on the crash, explained this to me in detail when I first discovered it was a cover-up, and as he did so, the tears rolled freely down his face. In any event, let's put that aside of it. This is really about me and my 15th anniversary, if I may be so, if I may indulge myself. In the last 15 years, this story has given me a purpose to live. It has given me purpose. It has produced providence along the way, and it will be my redemption. It is absolutely everything. All I have to do is to keep going to get it to the finish line. Now, I want to pay great homage here to a personal friend of mine who departed us 9 years ago, and that is the genius, brilliantly clever, genius artist Joe Young of St. Bridget's Place. Joe was one of my best friends for the last 10 years of his life, and whenever I'd be in Ireland, we'd go for 2 pints every Tuesday and Thursday night, and sometimes on a Sunday night. Well, he'd have 2, I'd have a lot more than 2, but don't forget Joe was almost 90. And Joe once said to me when he saw my passion with this story, he said, "Gav, this is going to be a big story when it breaks." I said, "Hopefully, Joe, I just want the truth to come out." And he said, "No," he said, "but let me tell you something about any good story that came out." He said, "The toughness for you is when the story ends. You're going to have to crawl to the finish line." Well, I want to put this on the record. My story came out 2 years ago. And I am crawling for the last 2 years. And I will crawl the whole way to the finish line. I will draw my last breath to get justice for what was done to these people. And to expose that they're still left in a plane in a bog because they didn't want to retrieve the plane because it would show the true cause of the crash. I will also take my last breath in proving that Captain James Richard Keohane was never, ever inadvertently off course. Never. I will go up against anybody with my findings. Anybody. The problem I'm now having is nobody will challenge me. Anyway, back to the 15 years. It's been a roller coaster ride. It has left me destitute, but it has given me a great internal strength that I have no fear of seeing this to its conclusion. I just hope my health holds out, because I currently undergo lots of checkups, like we all do in our whatever when we turn the big 6-0. And just to put it in perspective, as of today, I've given a quarter of my life to this project. And if it takes another 15 years, so be it. If I'm here, I will give it to it. And to those who don't want this story coming out, particularly the red, rotten, corrupt mainstream media, this story is coming through. I may not live to see it break, but break it will, okay? Justice for Jimmy Loons. God bless all. Take care. And thank you for my loyal followers and viewers who give me likes and whatever else you do, comments and shares, I guess. Okay. Up St. Kevin. Cheers, everybody.